Hi, today we're discussing setting up a sound system for the church and the 5 steps you can use to do it in 30 minutes. I'm Bill Polk, and this is The Polk Effect. Okay, so let's recap our first session. In our first session, we said the first step was know your equipment. We said, and knowing your equipment, it would dictate the components that needed to be included in the kit that you would put together so you could set up a sound system for the church and do it in 30 minutes. We also gave you 2 formulas. One was for a passive system and the other was for an active system. The passive system setup was mic/instrument, cable, console, cable, amplifier, speaker. It was called passive because the speakers themselves had no amplification module built into them and also no power module. The only thing within that speaker were the drivers. Okay, the second variation was mic/instrument, cable, console, cable, speaker. And we called that one an active setup because the speakers themselves were active speakers. That means they contained within the cabinet an amplification module, a power module, and the drivers. And that structure would be considered an active structure. We said that both those formulas are foundational to every sound system. They're the basic structure for every sound system. Now it's time to move to step number 2. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Step number 2 is simple. Organize your equipment. What? Yes. That's the step. Organize your equipment. Organization is the difference between chaos and efficiency. I'll point that out to you using the formulas we gave you in the first step. Okay? We're going to use the active formula because that's a simple formula. And what we're going to do is build a small system, say for a church between 75 people and 150 people. So we'll start using the formula. The first step in the formula is mic/instruments. All right. Now, every time I name a component, I want you also to say in the back of your head, plus XLR cable. All right? Every time I name a component, what will you say? Plus XLR cable. So here we go. So at this church, we've got 3 lead mics. You've got one for the moderator, plus XLR cable. One for the preacher, plus XLR cable. One for the praise team leader. Right, plus XLR cable. All right, so that's 3 mics so far, plus XLR cables. So we're going to move to the next part. So it's going to be a small praise team. 6 voices, 2 altos, 2 tenors, 2 sopranos. So that's 6 mics plus XLR cables. So right now we're at 9 cables and 9 microphones. Okay? So we're going to move to the horn section. We're going to move to the instruments now. So we said in the first session that if you have an acoustic instrument, you're going to need a microphone for it. So we've got 3 horns. We've got a trumpet, a trombone, and a saxophone. All right? So that's 3. So we're going to need 3 cables. So we had 9 from the vocals plus the 3. That gives us 12. Now we have drums. And we're not going to mic every drum. This is going to be a simple miking. We're just going to do main mics, okay? So it'll be a mic for the hi-hat, a mic for the snare, a mic for the kick drum. Overhead left, overhead right. All right? 5 mics. So we had 9 mics for vocals, plus 3, that gave us 12 mics, plus the 5 for the drums, that's 17 microphones, 17 cables. Now we're going to move to the electronic instruments. So in this church, we have 2 keyboard players, key 1, key 2. Key 1, of course, needs a 1/4-inch cable because we said electronic instruments take 1/4-inch cables. We also said that they plug into a direct injection box, remember? A DI box. So you've got 1/4-inch coming out of the keyboard going into the DI, and out of the back of the DI you have what? An XLR cable. And that happens twice, for key 1 and key 2. Now we have a bass guitar, okay? And 1/4-inch out of the bass guitar into the DI, XLR out of the DI. That's 3, okay? We're doing the same thing with the lead guitar. 1/4-inch from the lead guitar, DI, cable. So that's 4 XLRs, 4 DIs, and 4 1/4-inch cables, okay? So we had 9 vocal mics, 3 horn mics, that's 12, 5, that's 17. Now we've got 4 more components, that's 21. But wait, you might want to have some music playing before the service and for other reasons. Okay, so you might have an iPad, an Android, an iPhone, an iPod. You might even have a CD player. So you're going to need to connect any of those electronic components to the console via a different type of DI, which is called a PCDI. And that's what you use for electronic components like iPhones, iPads, that kind of stuff. They will take a mini cable, an 1/8-inch cable that will go into the PCDI, and out of the PCDI, we're going to have what? XLR cables. So we're going to do a stereo left and right, so we'll have 2 XLR cables coming out of the PCDI or out of your CD player, so you get left and right. So now we're at 27 cables. 27. All right? So you see how this is building. Now we've got all the mics, the instruments, and the music accounted for. So we've got 25 cables now. All right? So now let's move to the speakers. So, hold on. I didn't count that right. You're supposed to be keeping me honest. Okay. 9 vocals, 3 horns, 12, 5 drum mics, that's 17, 4 electronic instruments, that's 21, 4 1/4-inch cables, that's 25, 2 PCDIs, that's 27, and 1 mini cable, that's 28. All right, so now we go to the house speakers. House speakers take XLR cables, we already said that. So that's 2, 1 for left, 1 for right. We're at 28, 30. You've got left, right, front monitor, 2 more cables, 32. And then you've got 6 monitors for the band. That's 38 cables and 38 different components. That's not counting mic stands, speaker stands. That's 38 cables, 38 components, and it's also not counting spare cables. So do you understand why, with that many components, you cannot go into a venue all willy-nilly, haphazard? I don't know about you, but have you ever had somebody bring you a bag of cables or a box of cables, and you look down and it's a bird's nest of cables that you have to sit there and pull and kind of straighten out and clean up and all of this before you can even get to setting up? that will in itself take an hour or more to fix, especially if you're talking about 38 cables and spares. So you can't do that. You have to organize. You have to organize. Organization starts here. It starts with labeling everything. It's just that simple. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to label all your XLR cables, and you're going to label them at the male end of the cable. Why? Because that's the end that goes into the component. All right? It's less likely that that will be seen by the audience. So you're going to put a label on the outside of the connectors, of the male connectors, that says what it is. So speaker left, speaker right. You're going to put a label on the XLRs that go to speaker left, speaker right, and you're going to plug them in. Well, what am I plugging them into? You've labeled the speakers by the connector, right at the point where the connector is. Left, right. So you're not even thinking. If you need assistance, they don't even have to think, because it's labeled on the cable and it's labeled on the speaker. And sound equipment is simple because it's plug and play. So you give somebody a cable, you say plug that in where it says left speaker. You got left speaker there, you plug the cable in, you're good. All right? You're going to do the same thing with your monitors. Left stage, right stage. Left stage, right stage. Plug them in. Okay? You're going to label everything. Praise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're going to label it. Horn, trumpet, saxophone. You're going to label it. Key 1, key 2, bass, lead. You're going to label it. Overhead left, overhead right. You're going to label it. Snare, hi-hat, kick. You're going to label it. Straightforward and easy. Then you're going to have a snake box. Now, what's a snake box for? As we said before, because you're going to be a distance away from the instruments, you don't want to run a zillion cables. All right? What we said before when we were talking about electronic instruments is even though the console has a 1/4-inch input, unless you're going to sit right at the console, you can't plug that 1/4-inch cable into the console. So you're going to need an extension, which is why you do the DI box and why you do the XLR. But oftentimes the console is at the other end of the room. And when the console's at the other end of the room, what you're going to need is a path to get all those cables from your staging area back to the console. The easiest way to do that, rather than running 38 loose cables, is you get a snake. A snake is a long cable run. All the cables are built into a long cable run into one contained feed, and one end of it has a cable box associated with it, which has every XLR input that you're going to use on the box and every output you're going to use also on the box. That cable is one fairly fat cable that will run the length of your venue to the console. On the other end of that snake, you'll have multiple cables. Those cables will be the cables for each channel that you're going to plug in to the console, and they will be labeled. Therefore, you just read the label, plug it into its channel. You read the label, plug it into its output. All the outputs on the console will be labeled. All the inputs on the console will be labeled. It's going to be plug and play, straightforward, easy to do, and you're going to hook them up. All right? So now you've got a snake box. So all you've got to worry about is getting those cables to the snake box that's sitting on the stage, and the engineer has to worry about connecting those cables to the console. But here's the other thing you run into. Like I said, oftentimes you'll reach into a box and there's just a bundle of cables that now you have to untangle. And that's because no one put the cables away the right way. Let me demonstrate. There's a right and a wrong way to coil cables. Oftentimes, you'll see people do this. It's a personal pet peeve of mine. It makes no sense. It's ridiculous, and it creates knots in the cable. All right, let's go. No, 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 no. Never coil a cable in that manner. Why? Cables have a natural coil to them. A natural coil. They have a way that they want to be coiled to avoid stuff like this. There is a natural way that this cable wants to be coiled. Well, okay, Bill, I got that. Well, how do I find that out? I want you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to do. Okay? I'm going to show you how to coil a cable. And you need to do this with every one of the cables that you have. Every cable that you're going to have in your kit needs to be coiled the same way. You take the connector in one hand. You run your hand down to about the length of the loop you want, and you roll your finger forward. Do you see how this automatically began to dip? That's the natural coil of this cable. All I have to do is bring my hand together and I have a coil. I run my hand out, I turn my hand up, I put my fingers out, and I lay it across my fingers. I roll my fingers, the second coil. I flip my hand up, lay the cable across my fingers. That's the fourth coil. I twist slightly. My cable has been coiled properly. And if I want to throw this cable out to help me run my cables, I can take it and I can just toss it out. No knot. No knot. Now here's the good thing about this. When you get this technique down, you can do it 2 cables a minute. I don't care how many you got. Boom. Now, the next thing you want to do to help organize, so now you know how to coil your cables. Watch that section over and over and over again till you get it. It will save you a boatload of heartache and pain and tragedy and despair. Trust me, there is nothing worse than having to uncoil a nest of cables that are all knotted and you've got to fish them out. It takes forever to do. Coil them properly. Then go buy yourself some colored tie wraps, multiple colors, all right? And assign colors to components. What am I talking about? Okay, I got 9 praise mics or 9 vocal mics. Vocal mics will be white. I get the white colored tie wrap, which this is not, and I coil my cables and I wrap the white tie wrap around my vocal XLR cable, which are labeled at the male end. This isn't labeled because this isn't used. So I put the label there, it's coiled, and now when I load them in their bin, everything is color coded, everything is labeled. You don't even have to work sound. I can turn around and say, hey, grab the cables with the white wraps and plug them into the microphones. Okay? And I can tell you this microphone to the left is 1, that last one is 6. These are all labeled 1 through 6. Plug them in 1 through 6, and my mics are set up. All right? Organization. Organization is crucial. Order. Now, here's the other thing. I generally like working with what you have. So that there's no expense. The sound equipment's expensive in general. So that you don't have any extra expense, I tend to try to work with people with what they have. However, in an environment like this, there are some expenses you need. For example, you need a cargo case, an equipment case, so that you can take your 38 plus cables, okay? You figure 2 spares per section. I need 2 spares for my vocals, 2 spares for my electronic instruments, 2 spares for my horn instruments, 2 spares for my house speakers, 2 spares for my monitors. So, you know, you coil all of those up, you label them spare, and you go, you go on about your business. But you need something to organize that in so that when you lift it, everything's neat and orderly. So you need a cargo case, an equipment case, so that when you get to your venue, you open it up, everything is beautifully color-coded, labeled, and sitting in line, just waiting to be picked up and go. All right? You'll understand when we get into the other steps why that is so important. Okay? You'll also need a mic case, a case where you can place all your mics. So you're carrying one with all your mics. You don't have to be searching for mics all over. Oh, wait a minute, is there a mic in the bottom of that bag? No, because they're all in my mic case. You'll need a spot in the cargo crate, okay, where your DIs go. They'll all be laid out and organized and labeled. Guitar, bass, key 1, key 2, DI, boom. They'll be in there. You might need a spare DI. Things break. That's what I'm saying. Things break. So you'll need a replacement for those off chances a component might break. So you'll have your 2 DIs. You want to have an alternate PC DI in case something happens to that. So that will go in there. But they'll all have their space within your cargo case. You'll also need a bag for your mic stands and for your speaker stands. So right now we got a cargo case with equipment and with cables. We have a bag with speaker and mic stands. And then you have a bag for your microphones. And then you'll need a case to carry your console in, because you don't want any of this stuff to be bumped or to bang and to break when it's crucial to your service. Now, most of these cases come foam lined, so you don't have to worry about if you get a bump or a bang, because they're cushioned and it won't damage your stuff. But you want a case to carry all your components in and to keep them in order. Most cases will have dividers so that you can separate section. All right? So our first step was know your equipment. Our second step is organize your equipment. It's the difference between you taking hours to do what you got to do because you're trying to figure out where everything is, and you being able to set up a sound system in 30 minutes with the 5 steps I'm giving you. So we've had step 1, we've covered step 2. We look forward to doing step 3, 4, and 5 with you. And as I said earlier, hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you have not subscribed, please click the subscription button and hit the bell so you're notified every time we post something. It's been a while between posts with COVID and everything, so I do apologize for that, but we're back. We are back. And we have some great content coming up. I can't wait to get to some of it. My name is Bill Polk, and you've been watching The Polk Effect. I'll see you next time.